Hi again, everybody. My name is Betsy, and this is my Flosstube. Um, I go by Betselina Stitches, both here on YouTube and on Instagram, so feel free to look me up there. Um, this is a channel about cross stitch, and today I'll be sharing a few things that aren't cross stitch. Um, I did end up starting a few knitting and crocheting projects since we last spoke, but it'll be mostly cross stitch. So let's get started. The first thing that I started, I had mentioned wanting to start after watching Crafty Gaming Jamie start this project in a different colorway, and it is the 2% blanket by Lindsay George, and this is how far I am. I want to say I'm about halfway done. So you can see it works from the center out, and then each sort of row, every so many rows, the pattern changes. So I've been doing this popcorn row. And yeah, I'm really pleased with how it's coming out. However, I have hit a bit of a snag as I have been working on untying this monstrosity since, I don't know, now it's been 2 weeks. I kind of put it away for a while. But yeah, so working on getting this out before I can really go back to this project, but I'm excited about how far I've gotten so far. So that is the 2% blanket by Lindsay George, and I believe I'm using a 5mm hook on this. I will double check and put it in the description or on the screen, whatever. So that was the first thing I started since we last spoke. After that, I started for my Christmas ornaments with Go, Santa Over Toronto by Lindy Stitches. So here's that one. I believe this is a 32 count hemp linen that I got from Jackson Fiber Arts. You can see there's kind of like Santa's body and part of a Canada Goose. Really cute pattern. And I'm using DMC 2/2 on, like I said, I think this is 32 count hemp linen. So there's that one. And this was a Whipco call on my ornaments Whipco for I believe it was May, because I started this at the end of May. So there's that one. And this was in the Jingle Ball Baubles book for 2024, so last year's book. And yeah, it's a really like whimsical design, maybe. The next one I started was also a Christmas ornament. I believe this was also called for May's Whipco Christmas ornament Whipco. And that's Merry Creepmas. This design is by Haunted Frames. And I'm gonna try to get it close enough there so you can see. I had been working on a 28 count 1/1 project when I started this, and for some reason, even though I knew this was 32 count, I just started doing it 1/1, and then I thought, oh, it's only a few hundred stitches, I'll just keep going. So this is 32 count, I believe. Yes, it's a Cranberry Harvest by R&R Reproductions, 32 count linen. And so I'll get a little closer up there again. It's kind of like a Christmas tree, but it's also a little bit like witchy. There's a bat in the bottom there, like a clown face. And you might notice that the white stitches look a little pink. I think because of how rich this color is, it bled a little bit onto the white ink. But since it's supposed to be kind of creepy, and different kind of Christmas vibe, I think that it looks fine, and I'm happy to have it be in some places more white and some places more pink, and I just love this color. It's like so deep and dark. So that was Merry Creepmas, by Haunted Frames. And this was a freebie I found. I believe it was from Cross Stitch the Globe's free Christmas patterns episode. So, and it's 1/1 with DMC. And then I decided that for the green DMC, I had the this etoile of that color, so I went with a little bit more sparkly of a green. I don't know if it's showing up very well. So that was that one. After that one, I believe this was for June ornaments. I started this Christmas sampler. It said it was by Joanne Aston, but sort of put out in as a anchor pattern, and I just converted to the DMC. You'll see it is kind of like more bluish than green, but I just like that effect. And then this fabric is actually from a bit bag from Mystic Fabrics, where they just send you a bunch of things. I think I chose even weave, so this is even weave. And I thought it was just the right size for this, but in order to be able to stitch it, I had to sew on some pieces on the sides to be able to kind of pull it taut and be able to stitch it. So I've just done a few of the bands, but really enjoying this. It's like it's less symmetrical than it looks, so you kind of do have to pay attention. Like maybe you can see the trees are different heights, and in the center there's just like a little bit less space in between those two center snowflakes. So that's been kind of like, it's soothing to do something so symmetrical, but I still have to pay attention, or maybe in trouble. So this is also using DMC 2/2. I'm not exactly sure what count this is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a 32 count. So that's that one. I also worked on, for my Whips and Starts Whipco board, for June, I got Halloween Quaker by Lila Studio, and I was able to get a little bit started on that. So there's just like a little bit of the corner, the left top corner, which is where I wanted to start this time. Sometimes I start in the center, but this piece of fabric is a 20 count Ada in the colorway Paranormal by Be Stitch Me. And it's really pretty. Um, you'll notice that I am doing it not in the way, not in the same orientation as the fabric. And that was because I sort of turned the fabric around and looked at where I would want the witch to go, and this just seemed like the right way. And since I plan on probably framing this, I figured it was okay if it had a little bit less edge. Um, so it is going to be kind of tight, but I think that'll be the best in terms of the placement of the items. Um, so yeah, I'm doing this one on 20 count. It's 1/1. Um, and it's mostly the called for. I think there were a couple I swapped out. Like, I'm definitely doing the black in 310. I think there is a called for a 310. And then there's kind of some other colors that are like almost black, like a very dark brown, and then sort of like a chalkboard black. And yeah, I think there's maybe one or two colors that I didn't do in the called for, but most of them are the overdyed, and they're color and cotton, I think. Anyway, not very much of a start, but I started it. So there's that one. So if I didn't say before, Merry Creepmas was a start and a finish, so that one is complete. Another start and finish that I did, which I don't know if I should even call this a finish because I still have to do blocking and stuff, but I was teaching myself how to knit using a sock yarn in order to start my first pair of socks. And one of the YouTubers I was watching said that making this cup cozy was a good like practice and also to see what gauge you were getting from your needles. So this is a Lion Brand sock yarn called Mani Petty, and the colorway is Yoga. So it's a lot of this like gray and then different colors. And I'm using the size 2 knitting needles, and so I practice a little ribbing on both edges, and then the middle is just a stockinette stitch. And you can kind of see it's like kind of messy. Both sides don't quite look the same. I haven't done any blocking or like dealt with these ends yet, but I'm done with the stitching or the knitting. So that's that one. This is called The Easiest Cup Cozy, and it's by Gracie Kral. Again, this was recommended by a YouTuber, so I just went to that. And you know, sometimes, I don't know if any of you do this, but sometimes I want to learn something new and I just like jump off the deep end. And so I decided to use like the smallest possible needles and start teaching myself how to do the thing. I had knitted like maybe like over 10 years ago with much bigger needles. I started making a scarf that I never finished. So this was my first time, I think, doing a rib pattern. I'm not sure. The previous yarn was like very fluffy, so I think it wouldn't have made sense to do a rib pattern on it because you wouldn't have been able to see it. But yeah, so my first time doing a rib pattern, my first time using size 2 needles, and my first time binding off. So I'm pretty proud of myself, but I will say that I started the cast on and pulled it out a few times. And then when I was happy with the cast on, I did a few rows and I didn't like the way it looked. And so I pulled it out and restarted. Um, and it's still pretty messy, but I did learn a lot. So I'm very proud of this, even though it's a little messy. Yeah. So starting some knitting. And then the other June Christmas ornament whip go call I had was the Christmas deer wreath. And that is by Smart Cross Stitch. I think this was also from that freebies video with the freebie Christmas patterns. And I just barely started it. But I decided to use this old gold by Bestitch Me that I had started the ornament by Pansy Patch Quilts on. So it's, you know, it's just basically a wreath with a deer in the middle. So I don't think it's that many stitches, but I don't know. Things have just been really overwhelming. So there's sort of like a lot of, oh, maybe I'll just start the thing instead of like actually doing 5 days of stitching or whatever. And I spend a lot of time trying to untie that knot. So, and then also it's just been a long time. So it still feels like a lot of projects. So that was what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 starts. Oh, there's one more start. Oh, sorry, that was only 7. Number 8 is this project or kit that I bought on the Lion Brand website, and it is the Sunset Breeze wrap by Cozy Nook Designs, and I am doing it with the Lion Brand yarn that's called Made with Love, the cottony one. It's a cotton acrylic blend, and this uses size 8 and 9 needles, so much easier. And then I really like the shape of it, but the colors in the original aren't really colors that I wear, and I think maybe they were out of some of it as well. So I'll put up a picture of the way that I have planned out the colors. But so far, I'm just working on the collar. It's a top-down wrap, and this green color is called Olive Twist. And I'm just basically making like a ribbed collar, and then after this there's like a lace row, and then there's another row of stockinette, and it goes on like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing like what my first garment that's not a flat you know, a rectangle, like a scarf. Again, jumping into the deep end, it's like I knit for maybe a couple months more than 10 years ago, and now I'm like teaching myself how to knit with tiny needles and like maybe start some socks, and then I'm starting a wrap. So, but it's fun. And, you know, it will be good to have it started when it gets to be colder. And I think this one is supposed to be more like a summer weight. I'll have to check my gauge and make sure it's big enough. But yeah, so that is that one. That was my second start. And yeah, so those are all my starts. So I'm gonna pause the video and then I will come back and show you which of my whips I worked on. Okay, well, on to whips. I did work on quite a few different projects. I just feel like I didn't get as far as I wanted to on a lot of them. And I'll get a little more into that at the end. But first is my Extraordinary Birds stitch along. This is a mystery stitch along by Lola Crow. I think you can see most of it. This part you saw before. It's the Dracula parrot. But you can see it. I think I'm working on the 4th one. And we just had the 7th one come out, so I'm a little behind. But I just love this, like, all of the birds have such personalities, and I'm really enjoying it when I get to stitch on it. Unfortunately, there's just lots of other things that are taking up my time outside of stitching. But this is on the Called For fabric, which is Sandbar by Bestitch Me. Mine is a 36 count linen, and it's using DMC 2/2. So there's that one. I'll get a little closer so you can see the different birds that I've added. I really love this butterfly. And yeah. So that's that one. I also had a Monopoly call to work on Crocus in a Pot. And so I've got some more in there. I'm pretty sure I worked on filling out this flower. This is the last purple flower. And just a little, like, different, like, whites and tans and greens and stuff that were in there. So I'm almost done with the top. With stuff that's this, you know, it's not quite full coverage, but it's almost full coverage within the areas where they're stitching. I often, like, do a color until I run out of thread, sort of like from the top down or whatever seems close, and then when I pick the next color, it's the next color that is the closest to the top, so that as I go down, like, there starts to be blocks that there are no stitches left to do it. And I think that that also helps with, like, not having to shove your needle through so many stitches at the end if you leave, like, a few stitches. I know with the nature pouring out of the camera, that was really a problem for me. My fingers really hurt afterwards, so trying that out. Although I'm not sure if I did this again, I might try doing it with one strand of thread. This is 16 count white Ada. Just because when they're so close together like that, I think it might be okay to only use one strand, and then it wouldn't be quite so crowded. But I do love how it's looking. I think I set myself up for boredom at the end, though, because as I'm going from top to bottom, once the flowers and greenery is done, all I have is, like, 10 different colors of tan and brown to complete the pot. But that's okay. So this is Crocus in a Pot, and the designer is Tiny Cross Stitches on Etsy. And again, I'm using DMC 2/2 on a 16 count white Beta. So the next thing I worked on was the strawberry spot sampler that I'm putting together. So I think you might have seen it before in my whip parade or the finish parade. I'm just adding different things from different designers that have to do with strawberries and sort of arranging them on this moss green fabric. So this little image here is from Barbara Anna, and this is crossstitchingishappiness.com or something like that. She has a lot of different little patterns with this cat in them, and this one is like a strawberries in summer mini cat, and then this one down here is just a giant, sort of similar to the last one, like a full coverage strawberry, and everything on this is 1/1 on 25 count. So, and it's weird, I think like sometimes when I do tiny stitches, I'm a little like, oh, it's so small and difficult, but for some reason, like 1/1 on 25 count even weave, it just is great. So I might be more of a 1/1 stitcher moving forward. You know, I showed you I accidentally did it on Merry Creepmas, and that was kind of fun. So we'll see. But for now, I'm just sort of plugging along on this. I don't think I actually worked on it during the Strawberry Moon Sao, but I worked on it right before, so it was sort of, I just worked on it when it came up on my cross stitch Monopoly. So that's that one. And then the next one is Stitch for Pride 2025, and this is a mystery stitch along by D's 20 Stitches. And each of the motifs represents a trans or gender non-conforming person in history. And so I've gotten through May. May was Chevalier d'Eon, who was a French spy, and there's interesting stories about the way they were gender non-conforming. So they were a spy, but also a member of the Dragoons, which you had to be a pretty good soldier to be in the Dragoons, I believe. And so they were a spy as a man, or, you know, performing masculinity for sort of the first half of their career. And then at some point, they were having an argument about whether or not they would get their pension, and they had all these documents that they could release, and they were sort of blackmailing the king. And then at some point, it was said that they turned into, or they revealed themselves as being actually female. And so then they were perceived to be female, I think, I want to say after their 40s, for the rest of their life. And the stories that were told were sort of like, were they always, really female posing as male, or were they male posing as female? And um, they were sort of like very openly, their gender was discussed within both like British and French society, and there were like bets about their gender, which all sounds very uncomfortable to me. But it does seem like from the writings that the decision to be perceived as female um, was made by the Chevalier, or Chevalier, um, in the feminine, but that once they were perceived as female, they were expected to wear women's clothes, and they really wanted to continue wearing their soldier uniform. Um, and at the time, you know, like, I think it was the first time that they um, were like fully dressed in women's clothing befitting like a noble woman or whatever, that it took them 3 hours, and they were in tears, and you know, I mean, sort of recognize that being a woman at that time was not an easy thing. And so and they read a lot of books about feminism. When their library was full, they found all of these books about feminism. And then, yeah, so they were well known in society. And then they also published a memoir, which appears to be the story that they wanted to tell. Whether or not that is based on like how they actually perceive themselves, or just how they chose for others to perceive them, is kind of unknown. But it was very interesting, and also just like the sort of the switching of the gender and like the public view. I mean, I guess that was also happening with, for example, Hatshepsut and some others, but it just seemed like very much like in the papers, and like talked about at parties and in the government. They were gossiped about quite a bit. So that was very interesting. I've done the readings for June, or the learning. There's some videos and some learning, and that's about a free black trans woman in the 1700s, I think, in New York City. Maybe it was the 1800s. And most of the information that we have about them is from news caricature and from the their documents of being in court for having been a pickpocket and various things. But it's also very interesting because they describe their experience as being very accepted as who they are as a trans woman. They didn't use that language, of course, but like both in New York City with their friends and community there, and also in New Orleans where they had been before New York City. But of course, the public again had a lot of not so great things to say about them, and lots of discussion of their body and etc. So yeah, I feel like I probably could say a lot more about her, but I'm not quite remembering all of it right now. So that's what I'll be stitching next. That one has quite a lot of black work in it, or backstitch. So I'm excited about that. And then we just got a new person who I'm not remembering who it is right now for July. So again, I'm a little behind on this, but that's okay. I'm still enjoying it when I'm doing it. Another Monopoly call. Oh, and I'm sorry. This is using the Algae Ross thread pack. And it's on, the color is plum, and it's a Jackson Fiber Arts 32 count limited. Those colors on this purple are just beautiful. And it's 2/2. So next, I believe this was also a Monopoly call. I did a little bit more stitching on Winter Face. And I think we just added some like up here, somewhere over here. But yeah, it's like I'm starting to build around her face. But yeah, I think this is going to take a long time. It's like many thousands of stitches. So I don't know if I'll do the other. I have all 4 seasons. This is the winter one, but it's just much bigger than most of the pieces that I do. And especially for only having like 5 colors of blue and white or something like that. So that's that one. That's on a 14 count black Aida using DMC 2/2. And I'll be right back with some more. Okay, so the next thing I worked on was this Pink Flower Mill Hill kit. It still has a needle hanging off of it because I clearly stopped in the middle and then decided I was done. But you can see I'm pretty close to a finish here. This was another thing that was called on Cross Stitch Monopoly, so I probably did my 200 stitches and then stopped again. But looking forward for this to be a finish pretty soon, in the next couple months. So yeah, this is a beads only. Well, I mean, I'm sewing the beads into the perforated paper, but there's no stitches that are just thread. So yeah, this is my first kind of attempt at beading. I mean, since I was a kid, really. So that's that one. Next, I worked on a Christmas ornament that I had started a different month. This again was called on Cross Stitch Monopoly, and I believe I had to do 500 stitches, so I'm very close to a finish. This is Our Dear Home, and the design is by Jeanette Douglas. There's just like a sun up here, and then like a place to put the year if you want. So almost done. This should be a finish in the next few months as well. And this is on 36 count linen in the color Frost, and I'm using I'm doing this one 1/1, and I'm using a combination of DMCs. I think maybe actually they're all DMCs, but in some cases the conversion was to use 2 different DMC threads in combination. So for those, I did, I tried to do the darker leg of the X first and then the finishing stitch in the lighter DMC, so it's definitely in the border in those two different colors of green. And possibly in the tree as well. But yeah, and then I think maybe the smoke that's coming out is like I had the actual color that was called for. But it's mostly DMC. Looks like maybe one variegated fancy floss. So yeah, 36 count frost 1/1. Oh, sorry, 1/2. And should be done soon. And then on Juneteenth, I worked on this Juneteenth day. I had just had the top bands done before, and I was able to put in this flower pot, but not any of the flowers yet. So you see those. So I think that was really just one day of stitching. So that makes me feel good about the rest of it. I know there's some pieces that are more dense than others, but the top band was very dense. So yeah, so I think this is a 32 count as well. It's a linen and it's just a natural color that I got from a D-stash somewhere, so I don't know like what exactly who the fabric distributor or dyer is. Well, it's probably not. There's probably no dyer. It's probably just a natural linen color. So that's that one. And then I think the last whip I have to show you is another not cross stitch. But this is an embroidery kit, the black cat in a flower pot. And since you've last seen it, I did the leaves on this branch of the plant and over here, and I think some of the darker leaves on this side. So yeah, almost done with the leaves, and then I have some stem stitch to do for the stems. And then there's like yellow and maybe orange and white for the flowers, and a little bit for the shadow here. So I am playing Cross Stitch Monopoly, but we also have now an other crafts board where you can substitute what would be 100 stitches for 1 hour, or there are some like conversions for certain types of crafts. So I need to put in 5 hours on this because I was supposed to do 500 stitches on my oldest whip that was on my list, and this is the oldest whip that I have, I think, period. So I often feel like embroidery, like I'm not as happy with it, with the neatness of it as I am with cross stitch, but it seems to go much faster. So I've only done like like an hour and a half maybe, and I think if I keep going, I might finish it before I hit 5 hours. So you might see this as a finish in the next video. Yeah, so that's all for whips. I guess good to talk about goals and plans. I have For Whipco, I still have some stitching to do on the Christmas sampler by Joanne Aston and the Christmas Deer Wreath by Smart Cross Stitch. But for July, I had Festive Fruit Bat was called, and that's by the by the Blue Flower, and it is. I'm not sure if it was in the Jingle Ball Baubles book or if I just bought the pattern at the Jingle Ball. But yeah, so it's a festive bat. And then going with the sort of witchy theme, the other project that was called is called Dead Inside but Still Festive. So those two will hopefully get some stitches in them before the end of the month. And then for the Whips and Starts Whipco, Ars Robotica got called, so I'll be putting in some stitches into that, which is good, so I don't get to February and then feel like I need to do a whole quarter of it to be on track to finish it by Leap Day 2028. Alright. It was 2024 that I started it, yeah. Okay. And then and Frank was also called, so you've seen that one before, and we get some more stitching in on that as well. I also am continuing to play Cross Stitch Monopoly and other crafts Monopoly, so honestly, like when I've been really behind, I've mostly only kept up with Monopoly. There's just been a lot going on. So, and I feel like, this time of year is the time of year when like, there's just always a lot going on. And so sometimes I get a little behind, and maybe when it starts to get colder again, I'll catch up. I also, have almost completely finished paying for my ticket to the Pacific Northwest Stitch Summit in Portland in September, and I bought my plane ticket, and I'm really excited for that. So hopefully by the time that comes around, I will be in good shape to do tons and tons of stitching then. I'm going to be there for a week and a half, and then the retreat is just on that weekend, so that will be fun. Let's see. I totally have no idea what is happening with Pick a Whip, so I may go back to that and see if I can complete the prompts before the end of the year. But for now, it's not high on my priority list, although I do love Pick a Whip. And that is a game that is done by Marjorie Maid on Instagram and on YouTube. And I mean, she posts on Instagram more than she will tell you about it on YouTube. And she just picks up two prompts for the month. And last time one of them was strawberries because everyone's doing a strawberry moon style, and one of them was designer that starts with M. So I actually may have gotten that one done. Maybe not enough stitches for the Mill Hill kit that I was working on, but yeah. So those are my real plans. I would obviously like to catch up on my 2 stitch alongs, Stitch for Pride 2025 and the Lola Crow Extraordinary Birds one. But I've just decided not to stress about it. So yeah, I have some haul, but I am not at all organized today, so I don't think I'm going to go through it. Maybe next time. it's mostly just, I got some more yarn for my yarn projects. I got some more floss, and a couple different fabrics. But yeah, this one might be a little bit sweeter and shorter. Is that what I mean? I think so. um, and in terms of, let's see, um, in terms of shout outs, I didn't really make a big long list this time. There's a couple of people I've mentioned throughout, which I will tag. But I did start watching some knitting podcasts on YouTube. It's so interesting that they call them podcasts if it's knitting, whereas we call it Flosstube if it's cross stitched. Um, so I started watching um, TL Yarn Crafts, and I want to say that especially the episodes with her mom are the best. But in general, it's just like a very chill vibe to listen to her talk about her crochet. I think it's mostly crochet, some knitting, but and um, she has a lot of like deals with brands and stuff where she'll put out her patterns with a particular type of yarn, or um, I think she has some like crochet alongs as well. Um, but yeah, just generally like very chill. Um, Definitely like a business lady, but having a great time teaching people about crochet and doing lots of crochet herself. And mom has the best stash, so if you're missing some yarn and you go to mom's house, she probably has some somewhere. Um, and yeah, it's just really been fun watching them. Um, Another one that I watched is Therapy by Craft. And I really loved her talking about her different crochet projects. I think that she's um, done a lot more knitting than crochet, but I just happened to start watching when she was doing all crochet all the time. And so um, there are some like different baby blankets that she was making, and one of them was using the same Lion brand mandala yarn that I've been using to make that blanket I showed you. Um, Not the same colorway, but just the same kind of yarn, and it's an acrylic. And so it was good to hear like her tips on how to wash and block it, and to hear her say that like um, lots of people think of acrylic as being really like scratchy, but this acrylic really like gets softer when you wash it, and yeah, so that was helpful. And then she has, I think, a 5-year-old toddler, and so there was a whole segment about teaching her toddler to knit, and like um, she made a little square, and then like also just like the ways that she makes things for her daughter that her daughter just loves and like wants to sleep with, like blankie, um, because it just makes her think of her mom, and so that was sweet. And just like thinking about how you teach your children to do crafts like that. It was sort of like she watched her mom do it a bunch, and then she was like, I want to do it. And then there was like a few times where she like held the needles, but her mom was like moving them, and then she kind of taught her like a, I don't know, not a rhyme, but like a saying to say to yourself to remember how to do the stitches. Um, and then like, sometimes she would get tired of it and give up, and she just said, and I just let her, because you know, I don't want it to be a thing that she's upset about. So, and then, you know, later she'd come back and say, oh, I want to do it again. And I think her name is Therapy by Craft because she is a therapist in her um, 9 to 5 life. But yeah, so it was just nice. I'm not a parent, but I always appreciate when people have like gentle parenting techniques that are like, you know, raising their children to not be afraid of messing things up, because I was a total perfectionist, and I could use some of that gentle parenting on myself as well sometimes. Um, and yeah, I think that's it. Oh, one floss tuber that I watched who actually called me out in one of her last videos is the Snitch Stitcher. And I think I might have mentioned her before, because she likes to collect things that people say that sound like dirty or just not the way they're intended, that people say when they're talking about their cross stitch. And so I just have thought of her whenever I've heard things like that. And then I started watching, and also I think she was at the last online retreat, and I hung out a bit in a room with her. Um, I was pretty quiet. I never know how people perceive me when I'm like at a big group thing, because I never know. I don't know if this is like a neurodivergent thing or what, but I don't want to talk over people, and so I never know when to break into the conversation. And so then sometimes I just end up being really quiet unless it's like a very small group of people or someone asks me a question. Um, so, um, but yeah, she's really great. Really like uplifting, like kind of. She has one whip that says, "Damn, I'm beautiful," and and she's just very uplifting and like, but also, you know, a silly sense of humor, and she tries to like read a little bit of poetry at the end of each episode. And I'm a former poet and definitely like a lover of poetry, so um, that was just really nice and refreshing and like something different. So yeah, check out the Snitch Stitcher if you have a chance. Um, and you know, um, if you're new here, thank you so much for checking me out for an episode. If you've come back, thanks so much for coming back. Um, and yeah, I, well, I guess I should tell you a little life update, which is that I think that I spoke about this before, but I had to get surgery on my hand, and so that's also slowed me down a little bit. But my bandage is off, and now I just have a healing like um, scar right now on my thumb, and but yeah, that took out some time. It was really interesting though. It was like um, it's sort of like dental surgery in that you just get local anesthetic and they just give you enough that you just stay numb the whole time. Um, and so I was very numb. I could feel them holding my other fingers, but I couldn't feel the surgery at all. And it's a teaching hospital, so the supervising doctor was like, also had like his resident doctor, and they were saying like the surgery is like fiddly, and so it takes like 5 hands to do. They also had a med student, but they were like, okay, you narrate what's happening. And then like he was quizzing him and like asking questions, and so I don't know if I would have learned like nearly as much about what was happening if that hadn't been the case. But you know, there's like different nerves in your hand, and you have to like avoid the nerves when you're basically they like cut the tendon a little bit so that it can go through the sheath easier so that you don't get this pain or the locking that happens with trigger thumb. And then at one point they said, you don't have to look, but if you would like to look, I can show you your tendon. And so I thought, well, when am I going to have a chance to see my tendon in my hand? So that was weird and interesting. But yeah, so I did that, and then that was the third, and then I had the fourth off, and I rested the weekend, and then I was able to take the bandage off on Sunday, and it seems to be healing pretty well, but I still have a little bit of pain, and I was kind of trying not to do too much beforehand. And then while I was recovering from that, my dad was in the hospital again, so it's just been like, there's a lot of stuff going on at work and changes, which like hopefully will be good in the long run, but like it's just a lot of like peopling and worrying, and yeah, I've just been overwhelmed. But I will hopefully be back to stitching without pain soon, and then maybe I'll catch up on these things. We'll see. I have a feeling that knot's gonna take me kind of a while, so unfortunately my crochet project is a little bit stalled. But I did get some other yarn that is like a blue and gray and different colors of blue and gray, and then one that's more rainbowy, so I might try to decide what I could do with those. That would be good. If you can't tell, I'm like expanding to all the crafts right now, and so I'm getting a little done on a lot of things. But such is life, I guess. So yeah, looking forward to like easing into the end of summer and like, or the middle of summer, and like relaxing a little more. I still have quite a bit of like stuff to get through first, but yeah, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, so that's good. Anyway, if you found something you related to, or you just want to hear more of my silly rambling, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And I will see you next time.